Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. As always, we have guests that provide you with great information to help you with every area of your life, especially your business. My name's Ellen Rogin, and we have a really interesting conversation today and an expert guest, Craig Colvett, who I will introduce in a second. What we're going to talk about is how to go deeper in your relationships with your clients, whether you are looking at more of a coaching relationship, bringing more of the human side in. And there's lots of reasons that we'll get into why this is so crucial in the work that you're doing now, especially to stay relevant and to grow your business in the future. So let me welcome Craig. And Craig Colvett is the founder and president of Coach 360. He's got a deep background in financial services. He was a wholesaler. He's worked in lots of different areas, and he started his business with the intention of bringing resources to anyone to improve their lives and find fulfillment. And having worked with advisors for a long time and him being trained as in life coaching and really deep in this, he realized that advisors, this is such an amazing tool for them personally, and also to provide for their clients. And so that's what he does. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Craig, welcome. I'm so grateful that you're here with us today.
I am grateful to be here with you. As always, it's good to see you.
Yeah. And when we met at a conference where you were exhibiting, I was speaking, and I was fascinated by the work that you do, knowing that the financial services industry is changing, advice is changing. A lot of what advisors are doing is becoming incredibly more commoditized with AI and all the offerings out there. And I was struck by the kind of work you do and your talk about really the human side of working with people. So let's start with just this question, like, why does the human side matter in an area like financial advice where there's a lot of technical things that advisors do?
Yeah, great start. So maybe a little personal story and kind of how this came to be, because as you noted, my entire career prior to starting this business was in the investing world. I was a wholesaler, I was an advisor, and then I made a career shift over to becoming a life coach. And so after being coached, I recognized the power and the growth potential as a person that life coaching can bring. And I actually read an article in Barron's back in November of 21 that talked about people in retirement. In this particular survey, about 2/3 were unfulfilled or unsatisfied. And I just thought to myself, something's wrong, because retirement is portrayed as this spot that we all strive to get to, and we're going to have tons of freedom, and it's going to be like recess for kids, right? You're just going to be able to do whatever you want. But clearly something was amiss, and it seems to me that connector is the human being that's existing. And so really it's about recognizing that money represents really the means for us to live the life that we want to. And we need to figure out what we really want and what the money can allow us to do, not the meaning of money.
So we were talking before we went live about one of the questions when you start to talk with an advisor about whether kind of a coaching model would make sense in their practice. And you brought up this scenario of if they had a client retiring. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you tend to ask advisors to kind of start to think about how they want to engage with their clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question that I posed to the advisor when I engage with them and they're considering engaging Coach 360 from a partnership perspective, and I want to emphasize that is what it is, right? Again, I was a wholesaler, so I understand the value that partners can bring value to the advisor community and then ultimately to their clients. So the question that I'd like to pose to the advisor for them to consider is, if you got a client to retirement and the client was at or exceeded their financial goals and they were in wonderful shape as far as their wealth and again, what they wanted to achieve, but as a person, as a human, maybe they were unfulfilled. They were lacking purpose. Maybe they had some health struggles. Maybe there was some, again, just anxiety, frustration. I mean, let's call it what it is, right? I mean, depression is abound. And so my question to the advisor is, would you consider it a success if the client was at or exceeded their financial goals, but as a person didn't feel fulfilled? And my hope with this is that this gets them thinking in a really a bigger way, a bigger role that they can play for their clients. And it's up to them to answer. They can figure out if this fits into their business. And if the answer is yes, then there are ways to incorporate life coaches in various capacities.
One of the things that comes to mind as you're saying that is also from the advisor standpoint. I know you're a believer, as I am, in having coaches in your business, and whether they're life coaches or business coaches. And what I've seen probably too many times are advisors that have gotten to the point where they could retire and they don't feel fulfilled, and they hang out in their business too long.
Right.
And they're not turning it over to the next generation of whoever that is. I've had advisors I've worked with who are waiting for their people to like leave, and because they're not personally fulfilled or don't have the vision, they hang around. And I think that that's also a disservice for their clients. So this bigger question of like, what's next and how do you feel fulfilled? I'm sure many of you listening have had clients who have reached that goal, and yet they don't retire because they're not clear on what's next. And that doesn't feel like a win in that complete way as you're describing. So
could I jump in there?
Oh, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So the analogy that comes up for me, because I'm a big sports fan, the analogy that I've heard repeatedly when athletes retire, Kirk Gibson famously said this, at least that's who I attribute it to, played for the Dodgers back in the 80s, hit that famous home run in the World Series. But he said athletes die two deaths: when they retire from the sport that they've known, and then their natural death, right? And retirement, we can stay on that, of course, because that really is front and center and present for everybody. But retirement really it shares those similarities, right? What typically drives people to stay in their jobs is fear of what's next, right? And those fears need to be unpacked, and they need to have space for the person to decide, well, gosh, what are the fears? Where are they coming from? How can I frame them so that I can acknowledge them, right? Because fear is a part of who we are as humans. It's okay, but we need to acknowledge them and not let them continue to hold the power over us. So really, it's about giving somebody the opportunity to unpack it on their own terms, their own time frame, and let them figure out what's driving this and how do I move through it? Because you can move through it, right? People do, but really they need the space, and they're not often given that. And especially as an advisor, they don't likely have an advisor they work with. So even the advisor themselves can work with a coach to grow through this and understand the next chapter can be every bit as exciting. Oh, by the way, they may not need to retire.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get deeper into some questions advisors may come up around this, but let's go back a little bit more tactically to the business case around adding some kind of coaching emphasis to a client relationship. I mean, with the advisors you've seen and the fact that you see such a need for this, if an advisor doesn't add, whether it's coaching or some deeper way of relating with clients, what do you think the risk is for their business, whether like their actual business and their team or them working with their clients?
Yeah, so you know this, having spent a lot of time as an advisor. The advisor's business model has continued to evolve over the past 30, 40 years, right? It's continued to grow. And the way that it's continued to grow is it's continued to become more and more and more holistic, right? And holistic simply means the entire piece, or excuse me, the entire being, not individual pieces. And so, yeah, there's a business reminds me back in when I was in college, right? It's an opportunity and a threat to the business model. It's an opportunity for an advisor to be on the leading edge of the curve. Talk about that all the time, right? What was Gretzky saying? Skate to where the puck is going. So you can be on the leading edge of this. You don't have to, but just understand there's risk to not doing that. There is, because clients are, and there's third-party research on this, clients are coming to expect more from their advisors that stems well outside of just simply wealth management, because people are recognizing that money, yes, it's a necessary means without question, but money is just the means. It's the other parts that matter, the people that you include in your life, defining your purpose, living your values, knowing that we change, right? I was talking to a friend last night I was having dinner with, think about our perspective now versus 20 years ago. As we get older, our perspective shifts, our priorities shift, our families grow, we lose loved ones. So what might have been important 5 years ago might not be important now. And so the opportunity to sort of redefine this, but bringing it back to the business model, again, the advisor is a part of all of these conversations, right? Because again, the money is the means. So the advisor is involved in this. And so sure, they can have the conversation, but this is sort of taking it from the DIY home project to calling in a professional, right? And having that somebody on your bench that can step in and really help a client work through these challenges.
I think a lot of advisors hearing this might say, oh, no, I am holistic. I do financial planning. Sure. Like, we don't just provide investment strategies, because that all of a sudden became like, no, of course you have to do planning as well. But what you're talking about is well beyond that. And I would also think that it makes the planning even more meaningful for the end client. So maybe you can explain a little bit more how a coaching model offering viewpoint enhances the traditional financial planning, which of course we all know is beyond just investment management or insurance products. So maybe you can explain that a little bit for people that are like, no, I'm holistic.
Absolutely, yes. So you think about, again, back to your days as an advisor, if folks are doing it properly, you're asking your clients, what are your goals, right? What are your short-term goals? What's your goals for 23? What's your goal for the 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20, et cetera, working through those goals. So again, let's stay with retirement. Well, I want to retire at 60. How much time, how much bandwidth, how much capacity does an advisor and his or her team have to really give the client space to be able to really talk about and define what is retirement? I mean, one of my sort of pet peeves is I think retirement has been defined for us by people we don't know, and it's been in place for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so that's one example. Like, let's really unpack, what is retirement? What if you had a job that you loved, you set your own hours, you were fully engaged, you felt your sense of purpose, and it kept you involved in whatever it is you cared about? Maybe you wouldn't retire. So the extent that a coach can supplement what an advisor already does, and then when the advisor is meeting with the client, back to your question, when the advisor is meeting with the client, now understanding, why is having a second home so important? What is it about seeing the world that really matters? Are people doing it because society set some expectations that that's what you do when you retire, or the famous one, golfing, right? I mean, do you really like golf that much, or is it just something you think you should do because you can? And so those are areas that the advisor can do the client a huge service by just giving them a partner in the form of a coach and the space to be able to unpack that on their own terms. And when I say their own terms, their own time frame, they can process it. They can maybe seek out other resources. Maybe they listen to a podcast. Maybe they watch YouTube videos. Maybe they read a book. And it allows them some time to process it, internalize it, and say, gosh, I actually don't want to retire. I don't actually love golf all that much. What I love is being outdoors. What I love is being around my friends when we golf. I didn't recognize that. And so it's the opportunity for the client to recognize some things that maybe he or she never knew, because nobody really gave them the space that a coach can.
Craig, have you seen advisors that are incorporating this in their practice? Let's say they're acting as the coach versus referring somebody out to someone in their network or someone else who's a life coach. Are they charging separately for this? Like, okay, if you want our coaching model, this is what it is, and charge a fee for that. Are they incorporating it into their existing offering? Is it a whole big coaching process they take people through, or is it a coaching filter or emphasis in the way that they're working with clients?
It's a great question. I can answer it partially. So there is a firm here in Colorado, for example. Actually, I used to call on them when I used to wholesale, and they're an RIA. They have a life coach on staff. So if you're a client of theirs and you're paying their fee, again, they're an RIA, you're paying their fee, you have access to that coach. I don't know the terms or any limitations, et cetera, but you have access to the coach to work with him or her in that regard. As far as, it's because the rules vary per broker dealer, things along those lines. I'm not entirely sure. I do know that some advisors also do get certified as coaches. And that's, again, business decision, right? They can decide if they want to do that or if they want to have an expert, just like some advisors handle taxes as well. It's completely up to them what feels like the role that they want. But even that, I'll put a plug in for life coaching, even figuring out as an advisor, do you want to stay in your lane as an advisor, or maybe does the life coaching really appeal to you? And that's the part that you want to spend more time doing.
And are clients open to this? Because I could also see an advisor listening. I can imagine an advisor listening to this conversation going, my clients don't want that. They don't want me involved. Yes, I could have a bit of a broader conversation about what's next for them, but they don't really want me getting involved in that way. This is what they're looking for, is more traditional planning, investment management, and
Sure.
how we tend to think about things.
So it's a good question. I would look at it from the stance of in my humble opinion, again, having spent 20 years in the business, one of the primary roles as a financial advisor is to educate your clients on anything they find valuable. Right? I have an advisor friend who says that he gets calls from clients when they're at car dealerships asking what to do, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he's not a car guy, but they're looking to him for guidance in understanding something they don't understand. So my retort to that is simply, and again, this isn't for everybody, but my retort to that is simply, if you could provide the resource and even just educate them on, did you know that life coaches exist? Do you understand the role that they play and the way that they can help you? It's the same thing as if a client came in and you said, gosh, I just ate at this fabulous restaurant that just opened up. You should really go check it out. It's the same basic principle, right? You're sharing something that they may find valuable. It's completely up to the client if they want to engage. That to me is the beauty of it, right? And that's where you want the client to maintain the control of the engagement. Right? You want them to feel like they're in control, because the growth that will happen by working with a life coach can only happen when the client is ready to deal with it. And so you don't want the advisor driving that. So again, it's just an educational piece and sharing a resource they may find valuable. We're all human beings. We all face challenges. Look to your left, look to your right. Somebody's dealing with something right now, right? They're dealing with something. And we've seen this over the past few years. I think the pandemic certainly exacerbated it and maybe highlighted it as well. Having more resources for people to find the best version of themselves is a good thing.
So what other areas, in addition to retirement planning, I think you gave some really good examples about how a coach can help someone think through that part of what is traditionally talked about in a relationship with an advisor. What are some other areas that you've seen it being very effective to weave life coaching or a coaching approach into a relationship with a client?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a couple of examples. If you want to expound on any of them, we certainly can. So relationship coaching. I have a husband and wife team that they can work with couples, they can work with individuals, our primary relationship, alongside probably our relationship with our kids, is the most important relationship in our lives. And so that could be one, right? Every person that's sitting across from the advisor in some way, shape, or form is dealing with a primary relationship and the challenges that come with that. We're all humans again. Another one, I have a coach who works as an empowerment coach for teens and young adults. So I think about the great disservice that's done to, when I was 18 and trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life, I didn't have a clue. And I really didn't want to hear from my parents. And so I had to do a lot of trial and error. But I think if you're an advisor, think about the median age for your clients, right? It's probably 40s, 50s, 60s. They have kids who are teens, young adults. What if you could provide a resource for their kids, right? And you think about that client and how that's going to impact them. Are they ever going to come back and say, wow, you underperformed the S&P this quarter, but last year you helped my kid find their footing and get their feet under them? And so that's another one too. And I think, countless executive coaching exists. You're familiar with this one, energy and intuition. Very powerful stuff. So the beauty of coaching is that it's broadly applicable to any topic that you as a person want to grow through. So if you envision some goal, as we all have them, if you envision some goal and you want some support in that, a coach can fill that void.
Yeah, and I would imagine it would make, like you were saying, with that example of helping somebody's kid, it makes that relationship so sticky because you've made such a big difference.
Yes.
For someone in their lives. And the other thing I could see how this is so helpful from the advisor's standpoint is someone who I had a practice for about 28 years, and I ultimately left it to do work that was more what I felt was more my work in the world. But I know that partway through that process of having my practice, the thing that made me not only more successful as a financial advisor, but happier doing it was focusing on my purpose in that. And I see lots of times with the advisors that I work with, they get to the point where they're kind of dialing it in. And especially if they're making a lot of money, because then it's easy, right? It's like, I don't have to work that hard. There's all this money from AUM fees flowing in. And besides that, it's really a disservice for clients. I would be curious about some of the stories that you might have about advisors doing their own deep dive, because I know you're a proponent before you would ever offer it to a client, you got to do your own work. Like some of the benefits you've seen for advisors in terms of course, there's personal benefits, but also how it's impacted their professional work.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really, there really isn't a distinction there, right? I think that's something that our team really tries to emphasize, right? We are one person. We are the same person when we're sitting at our desk doing our job. We're the same person when we go home and dealing with our family, etc. So understanding that there's really not a distinction between the two, and being completely feeling like you're in a spot where you're passionate and you're engaged is really important. So how can the advisor, so I'll give you one example. So I have an advisor team that we work with. It's a 12-member team. So there's a primary, I forgot his title exactly, but he basically runs the group, but he's dealing with 11 personalities, and he's trying to run a business, and he has clients. So he's taken on a role that maybe he didn't envision, right? All of a sudden he's become a manager of humans. And so there are challenges that go with that. What kind of manager do you want to be? How do you want to be perceived? What do you want to do for your people? What opportunities do you want to offer them? So that can be one example where the advisor is in a slightly different role than maybe they used to be, or one they're a little bit uncomfortable being in. So they can work with the coach on that front. And yes, anything on the personal side that he or she may be dealing with, right? Again, primary relationship challenges. The divorce rate's 50% in the country. There are plenty of them, right? Challenges with kids, whether adult children or not. What kind of parent do you want to be? Familial challenges. So, actually this advisor also had a situation in which he had a wealthy client that was part of a wealthy family. And there was a lot of challenging dynamics within that family because of the wealth. And so that's another area. Some people who don't have money think that money will solve things. And that is true to an extent. And then it also opens up several cans of worms as far as things they didn't used to have to deal with. And so that's the part that, again, the flexibility that it offers is it's very versatile. It can be applicable to the advisor and his or her team. And this advisor in particular really wanted to find out, to figure out ways that he could bring more resources to his team members, right? How to help them grow both personally and professionally. And so that's another way where if you're looking to really, because again, I know this from my time, like this is not Google where there's, 100,000+ employees. These are 2, 3, 5, 7-person teams. Every person's role is extremely critical. And making sure that they are cared for, they felt heard, that's going to help them out in all the ways.
And that's so crucial because I have advisors telling me either they can't recruit good people or they can't keep them. And, one of the things that I'm most proud of about my practice is that I really never had anybody quit. I had a couple people retire. I fired a couple people. And I don't think it's because I was such a smart manager of people. I think there was a lot of psychological safety in our office and me wanting my team to grow. So what you're talking about, an advisor who's really there trying to support their team, I would imagine that they have greater retention of good employees than someone who's just so not focused on that.
So there are to kind of connect life coaching. So there are corporations that bring in life coaches as essentially another benefit to their employees, right? And so to your point, let's just stick with it because I brought it up. So let's stick with the Alphabet example. Have you ever been to an Alphabet campus?
No.
Okay. So, there's just all kinds of activities they can do. There's rock climbing walls. They have their own coffee shops. Why do they do all that? Because if the employee feels valued, if they feel heard, if they feel like if they need a 20-minute break and they want to recharge, they want to work out on their lunch hour, if they feel that, they're energized. They feel like the company values them. So I agree with you. And we can't just look at, say, just the physical side and offer a gym membership, which my former company did, which was fabulous, right? We're a whole being. So again, the spiritual, mental, emotional challenges that arise, sometimes just having somebody, an objective third party, to be able to, quite frankly, Ellen, just have the space.
Yeah.
Just have the space to be heard. That's an important thing.
And I imagine if more advisors were doing this, if more companies in general and their teams were available, this whole quiet quitting thing where people have just kind of checked out. I just wrote a blog on, are you quiet quitting your own practice? And I think one of the ways I've seen advisors do this, they check out and it's awful for them, but it's awful for their clients and obviously their teams. But I think that I just love this discussion about ways to go deeper with your clients and also for yourself to make your whole business flourish in better ways than just increasing AUM.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
yes.
Cool. So really a fascinating conversation, Craig. Thank you so much for this. If people want to learn more about your services, how you work with advisors, what's the best place for them to reach out to you?
So they can jump on the website, coach360.io. There you can reach out to me directly. I like to flash back to the old pick up the phone and give me a call. This is a very human offering, human service. And so I love to engage with people and hear their thoughts and try to understand their vision and allow us the opportunity to implement them. But from there, they can find my email address, phone number, and learn a little bit more about what we do and how we help teams. As you said, I love that word, flourish.
Cool. Great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got to connect in New York and that you were available and generous enough to share your time today. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the time. It's great to be here.
And for all of you watching and listening, thank you for being here. I'm so grateful for that. Again, my name is Ellen Rogin. And if you want to learn more about me and the kinds of things I do, you can go to ellenrogin.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, What Extraordinary Advisors Know That Others Don't. And the question to ponder today is, how are you going to have deeper relationships with yourself, with your clients, and with your team? Remember to be great and create great every single day. Thanks for being here.